We're back. Happy Friday, everybody. We're Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network. Rob Ellis, Derek Gunn, Barrett Brooks. We are joined now by the man who covers the Philadelphia Eagles for the Philadelphia Inquirer. You can follow him on Twitter at Jeff_McLane, and also has just started a new podcast, Uncovering the Birds. Jeff, what's going on, man? How are you?
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yeah, man.
I like the setup, man. Is that at the house or you at a
No,
studio?
I'm actually down at Odyssey. We have to Odyssey to work on this podcast a little more. So
Well, that's what's
I
up,
might
man.
be bumping into you
Congrats.
down there, Jeff. That's good, man. It's good.
yeah.
Tell us about it. What's going on with Uncover. I know Lane Johnson, I believe, was the first guest. Is that correct? Or this week's guest, Jeff?
Second, well, yeah. So it's a narrative series podcast. So we're telling stories. You know, some of them may be, you know, stories that or characters, players from the past. In the first case of the premiere episodes on Evan Mathis, he talks about his gambling addiction and this new venture that he has. That's basically, well, he lost like 60% of his net worth at one point to gambling. He's now invested basically all of his money into this market. He has an app that's going to be coming out that's going to try and corner the market on the secondary card sales. You know, like baseball cards, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And we got to go into like a little bit of Evan's career, some pretty funny, mind-blowing stuff that he had to say. If you guys want to listen to the first episode, second episode, Lane Johnson about his mental health struggles, but also just about his kind of love-hate relationship with football, even in spite of the fact that he just signed a contract restructure, as you guys know. And then episode 3 is gonna be about Chip Kelly.
Whoa.
Wow.
Okay.
We got a lot of different voices on that one, and so we'll 10 episodes this first season. This is something new, so we're kind of learning as we go. We got obviously some pros that are helping me with it, but it's something I'm really enjoying, and it's like a narrative series. You know, like they're going to be about like 20 to 30 minutes. I think the Lane one today was like 34 minutes, but generally in that range. You know, not bite size, but not over an hour and a half. Something you can listen on the train ride into work, or
Right.
So yeah, excited about it.
That's awesome.
Found out, man, that, you know, a lot of people, the shorter the podcast, the more people listen. Our attention spans are so short nowadays. If you keep it in like a 20 to 35-minute range, people are inclined to listen to the entire thing more than, you know, a lot of people that do hour and a half podcasts.
Right, and that's the whole point. I mean, this is, you know, very much edited, just like, you know, writing a story. It's you try and take as much of the best parts that you can, and you know, in this case, produce a podcast to the length that it deserves. Just as I try and write stories to the length that they deserve. Some may say that I write a little too long, but thankfully, I have a great producer here in Brian Seltzer who helps kind of tighten it. We can keep it at that, as you mentioned, a really good, I think, sample of you know, in terms of how long it goes from. We're gonna try and keep them no less than 20, no more than, I guess we went 34. That's pretty long. I think the Chip Kelly one maybe getting close to 40. We got a lot of different voices on that one.
Yeah.
Coaches.
Everybody got a lot to say about Chip.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and a little bit of Chip, because I spoke to Chip a couple months ago about Dom DeSandro story I did, the Eagles head security, and we kind of like at one point dovetailed into a conversation about just how it was to be, you know, dueling with each other as head coach and me as a reporter, kind of pain in his side all the time. So that kind of got, you'll hear some of that in the podcast, and then we kind of delve into like a little bit of, like, you know, almost a re-examination, I think, of Chip's tenure.
Hey, Jeff, be careful what you say about Dom. He's got people that'll come looking for you. I don't want to see you go missing.
Dom loved that story.
Oh man,
I'll give you this, Jeff. And let me ask you, was it hard? And I know you obviously covered other Penn State, some other stuff before you got on the Eagles beat. I know that, but you are a guy, and I mean this is in the highest of compliments, that is not afraid to ask the tough question, that will mix it up a little bit, get under their skin. You're not just there to, you know, to kiss ass, frankly.
You mean,
okay.
You like to piss people off, rather.
No, I'm not saying he likes to do it, but he's not afraid to do it. There is a difference, right?
I've seen it firsthand.
Right. Was that ever, have you always looked at it like, hey man, I got to do what I got to do to get the best story, to be the best reporter? Was it ever tough on you to, like, some of the heat you may take from the organization, and not just the Eagles, whoever? Was that ever hard for you to be able to deal with?
Yeah, I mean, at times, you know, that it's part of the job. I mean, considering how much I get paid, maybe it's something I shouldn't take so seriously as I do. And, all the kind of blowback that you'll get from time to time. I mean, I don't want to get too much into detail. I'll save that for my memoir because I don't want to name names and some of the heat that I got behind the scene, because typically, again, that's what happens. I mean, there's a lot of what I call inside baseball in terms of how you deal with the PR staff or people in charge of the Eagles. And, which is why when I got thrown out of the press box, what, 6 years ago now or 7 years ago now, for what is now everyone has realized was just one person had an issue with me and just wanted to use their authority to kind of, knock me down a peg. What happened was that was just like a conversation I was having with one of the other PR guys, something that we had. It's like something that is Gunnar knows this as well as anybody. Yeah. This stuff happens behind closed doors all the time. Yep. And it just never sees the light of day. And, I've had obviously some instances with other reporters that would have never seen the light of day because unless other people put it out there, because that stuff just happens and it's not meant for public consumption. And that again applies to, the relationships you have with people in the locker room, the Eagles. I've had guys in the locker room try and, to yell at me, flip out on me, at times, to the point where it's gotten pretty contentious. But I will say this, and the thing that I'm learning about myself as I've done this now, I'm kind of looking back at older stories that I've written, and I almost cringe at some of the stuff I wrote because I feel like I'm just just like in terms of like how I covered guys, and this Lane Johnson story is a perfect example of that. I really try and do a better job of like putting myself in the shoes of people I cover. And I mean, you should always do that as a journalist. That's what you want to get as many voices as you can on a particular topic as possible, because you want to tell as close to the accurate and fair, honest version of the truth. That's basically what I'm striving to do when I'm reporting. I want to get as close to the truth as I possibly can. Am I ever going to get there completely? Probably not, but I'm going to try my best. And to do that, you have to get voices, talk to everybody, put yourself in the shoes of the people you're writing about. I feel like I try and humanize these guys more. I enjoy doing that more because that's what they are. They're humans, just like the rest of us. And they go home, except for Howie, and they go home to family. Kidding, Howie. I know you're listening to this right now.
What's up, Howie?
Howie's a little bit of a robot. No, I'm kidding. No, he has a family too, and he's got kids, and like I know for a fact that things got pretty bad. Like I wrote stories that probably weren't 100% favorable in terms of what, but they were always never personal. They were always about the job and what he did. Yep. But that being said, I know, and you guys go on the radio, you criticize and stuff like that. But I know, like I'm sure I've heard about this. His kids getting crap at school for their dad, or like I mean. He's had some pretty things have kind of filtered down to him in terms of like where the police had to get involved. Let me just put it that way.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and that's that's real life here. Yeah. And so I feel like as I get older now, I just I'm getting better at doing that and trying to humanize these guys and understand that there's more to it than just like looking at a guy on film or hearing what telling you about someone and putting it out there. Sorry, long-winded answer.
No, you know what, Jeff? The biggest difficulty or hurdle to overcome in a lot of cases is when you're a regular beat guy in their faces. At some point, they perceive you as one of them or more as a friend, more so than an adversary, and they forget real quick that you do have a job to do to be as fair and objective as possible. And then it does again. I've had that happen many times. Where you have to explain yourself and what you did. Now, eventually, cooler heads prevail and things subside, but you have to go through that. And again, I like what you said because I've abided by that principle as well. Never make it personal, number one. And let's face it, there are certain things that we find out we cannot tell. Now, eventually, some of those things may come out, but somebody else is going to release that, not us, because they're releasing it from afar. We have to be in that locker room every day. And that's a big difference, especially when you're trying to gather information and be a little bit different from the 50 other people and trying to gather the same information you are.
Yeah. I mean, just real quick to touch on the Lane story. I remember when and Gunnar, you were involved in this too, when he left, wasn't there on the field for that City game in 2021. And of course, my job is to find out what happened, call sources, text my sources, find out what happened. It didn't take long. By the next day, I pretty much had a very good handle on what was happening here. His mental health issues had come to fore. He was dealing with a lot of anxiety and deep depression from the fact that he had this horrible ankle injury, and that he was also trying to wean himself off Paxil, the antidepressant that he was taking. He was considering quitting football. He drove all the way back home to Oklahoma. Was telling me it wasn't. But like, this is a human thing. It was Lane's story to tell, and I wasn't the only one. A lot of the other reporters found this out as well. And I remember you'd get stuff on Twitter like, we need to hear this. You need to tell us this.
Right.
Because yes, in some cases that we do have to put that aside if there's something real important. But again, I'm not covering the president of the United States. Let's be clear. And so that's why none of us reporters dropped any hint or wrote about that until Lane decided. He went on. He chose Fox to tell his story. But after that, after the game he played against the Raiders, he was more than accommodating and stood out in the front of the podium and talked to everybody. And after it, individually thanked every reporter. They handled it.
Yeah, I commend you for that. And because sometimes you know the story. Like I know, because I'm a former player, I have those conversations that you're talking about with players that I can't divulge what I'm talking to them about, because they're looking at me like a player and not as media right now. And I find it hard for me to make that distinction. And I go to these two all the time about how do I separate what I need to say and also keep the relationships that I have with these guys, man. So it's tough for me, man. I don't see how you do it. It's tough for me.
Yeah, same thing for the reporters. Probably harder for you guys, just because ex-football players, because they're in kind of a code. Especially the guys. You have to go on TV, but you have to kind of keep it real as well too. You're gonna have to be critical at times, as long as you're being fair.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
I found out. I had an instance where I was, covering a play, and when the play happened, I know, basically, a screenplay is a screenplay, and I know, the rules have been the rules for years. And on the screenplay, the first guy that gets out on the screen has the widest. Has the mugger. The mugger's the guy that has the back man to man. The second guy out on the screen has the widest guy on the field. The third one checks back and turns around to see what's going on. Nobody's chasing it, and then gets up the field. Well, what happened was the first guy out didn't get the guy he was supposed to get. He was supposed to get the guy who was covering the back, and that guy made the play for a loss. And I said, this was this player's job to get this done. He didn't get it done. That's why the play happened, yada, yada, yada. So I go to the locker room 2 days later and say, hey, man, the players just went, hey, man, why are you going to say that, man? You don't know what you're talking about. I said, what do you mean I don't know what I'm talking about? Well, how do you know when I play? I said, it's a screenplay, right? Yep, slow screen, right? To the running back, right? I said, the first guy out gets the mugger, right? Were you the first guy out? Yeah, but I went to the wide. I said, so you messed up on that play. You were wrong on the play. You were supposed to get the mugger. So yeah, but I'm like, all right, am I lying? If I'm lying, then you tell me I'm a liar. I'll go back and retrack it. But am I lying right now? No. So what are you talking about? Where are we going right now? I know you pissed off because you messed up a play, but don't get mad because I just told the truth. Now I got to tell the truth. But and me and that player, we're cool now. But it was a thing for a little minute. It was definitely.
What's his name?
We see a tweet from Jeff in like 5 minutes as soon as he gets Jeff, let me ask you, just football wise, we're close here to the draft, not that far out. Is it possible to get a sense for this? Because they're sitting there at 10-30. We know the proclivity to trade up and down that Howie has. We know he's aggressive draft night, those kind of things. We know they have needs, but there's the debate of need versus best player available. I guess long way of asking this. Do you have a sense of kind of where they may be going here if they stay pat, so to speak, or is it totally wide open?
I have to go just based upon history of what they typically do in the first round or what they typically do with high picks. If you're asking me like stay there, pick a player, move up, move back, I would probably think that move back is so they can accumulate picks would be probably the number one thing I could see Howie doing.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, if there's a great impact player there at number 10 that had fallen to them, certainly I could see, or if someone like, that should have gone in the first 3 picks, and because all the quarterbacks go in the top 5 picks and they fall, and all of a sudden there's this great guy there at number 7, I could see him moving up too. Howie's, Howie's MO is almost kind of like swim against the current. I mean, he wants to find edges. And so he has to look at those 2 first-round picks and say, hey, what's the best thing I can do that kind of gives me an advantage over what everyone else is doing? We know it's a copycat league. He wants to do what everyone will eventually start copying from him based upon what he's done, whether in the draft, et cetera. Now, look, again, if they pick a 10, D lineman probably, right? I mean, maybe Richardson, a cornerback. I can see him. I don't think they've ever taken a cornerback that high. But obviously O-line, D-line would probably be the most likely ones you see them take there. Again, I think cornerback is probably certainly in play. But not a running back. We're talking 10, not a running back, not a probably not a receiver. They don't really need a receiver. Quarterback, obviously, no. Tight end, no. Linebacker, no. Safety, no. So what that leaves us?
That leaves us, corner.
D-line, probably more. O-line, they're not really.
All right, O-line. Let's go O-line for a second. They just locked extended Lane. We know that. Lane's not young. Kelsey's not young. We know Juergens is there on standby, either at guard or at center when Kelsey leaves. Is that a possibility if there's a guy that they love that they would grab? Because we were talking about it earlier. If the fans won't love it, but that's very Eagles-esque.
Yeah. And maybe a guy that has some versatility. You always want to have versatility guys. And then, of course, if Kelsey retires and you map it out, Juergens move to center. That leaves a hole at right guard. You get someone that by his second year, he could start at right guard. And then potentially once Lane retires, slide over the right tackle and play it. But, because again, I think what people tend to do sometimes when they look at the roster and they have guys in, like even look at the edge rusher position. Hassan Reddick, great year. Josh Sweat, very good year. And these guys are, I think, like 28, 29 around there. But they're only signed really guaranteed for a couple years. Like, so you can't be thinking, oh, I'm going to have Hassan Reddick forever. No, the Eagles don't think that way. They only think like maybe 1 year, or maybe 2 years on certain cases, unless it's the quarterback position. Or like the left tackle position. You got a young left tackle like Jordan Mailata. But a lot of those other positions, they're not thinking that way. They're thinking if the best guy available is happens to be at left edge, then they're gonna draft him, even though they have Hassan Reddick.
Hey Jeff, let's look at what has transpired during the offseason. We haven't had a chance to talk to you. They lose their top 5 tacklers on defense to free agency. But when you look at the people they were able to bring back, they brought Bradbury back and lesser money he could have made on the open market. Graham could have made more money. Fletcher Cox could have made more money. They reworked Slay's deal. They didn't give Slay what he wanted, but they reworked his deal to make him happy. Are you surprised they were able to bring that nucleus back?
Not really. I mean, like Howie said, he was a little surprised by it. I mean, I thought CJ and Hargrave would be the number 1 and 2 guys that they would try and bring back. And then as I did more digging on CJ, I realized why his market had dropped so low and why the Eagles weren't really dying. I mean, they gave him an offer initially more than would have gotten. But then I think the relationship all of a sudden just kind of turned sour when that kind of negotiation, he said, oh no, I'm going to go look for more. And he went out and he couldn't find more. And then
Well, what did you find out? I don't know what you found out. I didn't find out anything. What did you find out?
CJ. So, I mean, like, teams around the league view him as a risk, and that if he had gotten this big contract, they weren't sure how he would behave. Would he do all the necessary things that he needs to do, like he had been doing this past year? There was concerns about that. Fair or not, I don't know if it's true. I mean, I look, CJ didn't talk to a lot of the guys in the locker room. For some reason, he kind of took, I would think, I wouldn't say a liking to me, but he kind of would, I would get him alone for certain conversations. So I wrote some stories about him. I liked him. I thought he was a pretty bright guy. He's definitely a little bit of a wild card at times. And I think, as I found out at that time and then later, It takes a little more handling of CJ than maybe, like a Darius Slay. He's a young guy, though, very talented. You have to consider where he's coming from, his background, his childhood, how he grew up too. But look, there was a reason why the Saints wanted to trade him and only took essentially a 5th round pick in return. They were not getting along with him. And okay, say that's just the Saints. But then I started calling around other GMs and said, why isn't CJ getting more than what I'm hearing he's getting? And they're like, teams all view him as, again, this potential risk once he gets this big contract. Now, that could just be like, whisper down the lane, and all of a sudden it's like groupthink and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
They might get it wrong. CJ is a really good instinctive player. Now, I will say this: I don't think he's like some stud safety. He was just new to the position. He had impact plays as in terms of the 6 interceptions in 12 games. But if you watch the film and I spoke to some coaches like that, they're like, he makes some mistakes. I mean, so.
Especially in his run fits and where he's supposed to be.
And then sometimes in coverage, he just didn't know didn't know how to play whatever kind of leverage they were asking of him or whatever. So, but that was some of that, can in time. But that's essentially what I found about CJ.
That's interesting, Jeff. I know you got to run, but we appreciate you giving us a couple minutes.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it, man.
Appreciate you, bro.
Stuff, man. We always like talking to you, Jeff. Thank you very much,
awesome.
Man.
Thanks, guys.
Take care, man. Be good.
You got it. That is Jeff McLane, Philadelphia Inquirer. You can follow him on Twitter at Jeff_McLane. I don't want to say this like tooting our own horn, but this is something that I enjoy that we do, guys, because it's not just always X's and O's. I like learning about people's jobs and how they go about it and how they do things. Like Gunnar, you're great with that when you talk about your sources. And Barrett taking us inside the game. And like the example you just gave when you talked to a player and then the guy was mad at you and you said, all right, well, let's go through it. Right. Yeah. I don't think you get a lot of that at other places. And again, I'm not trying to like pull a rotator cuff, doing this for us, but I do like that we do that kind of stuff where it's not just always, all right, let's break down, what happened on 3rd and 5. Like you learn about things. I thought we learned some stuff there with Jeff. That was
question,
cool.
Especially as far as with CJGJ. We had said a long time, I know that, we spoke on it. And I was saying that, yes, I want to sign him back, but we probably haven't scratched the surface of how good he could be at the safety position.
Yeah.
But I was like telling people, he's not the best safety that's out there right now. Just like right now, I'm getting a lot of slack right now. There's people talking about, well, we just went out there and we signed Edmonds. Edmonds is a better safety at this point than CJGJ. Right. And people are like, oh, what do you do? You don't know what to tell? No, I do know what I'm talking about. I watched the film. CJGJ is not. He wasn't as fundamentally sound as what you would need for an everyday safety. Mm-hmm. Yes, he made plays. I'm not taking anything away from that. He made 6 interceptions. That was great. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Right place, right time, made it happen. But a lot of people forget about how against Detroit, they were running all over us. And a lot of times it was his fit that wasn't there that they ran the ball on. Or, he was supposed to do
He's still learning the position, right?
Exactly. And he just learned the position. Yep. I mean, he's a bad player, but he hadn't learned how to be a safety. Terrell Edmonds knows how to be a safety. Right. He will be where he's supposed to be. He will make plays. He will play the safety position like the safety that you would say been there their entire career. Yeah. So you're going to get a better safety play from Terrell Edmonds right now. Now, later on, I don't know. CJJ, he might climb up and become a great safety. But at this point, we have a better safety in Terrell Edmonds right now.
Well, I think so. I think there's 3 things at play. 1, he's learning the safety position. 2, it's safety. You don't get paid as much at safety as you do at corner. You just don't, right? And 3, there is concern. Like I see people in the chat taking it completely the wrong way.
Yeah.
What Jeff was saying is, and Jeff said his experience with him was great, by the way. So, but he said that's what the concern is of teams. If he's not on the last year of his deal where he has to be on his best behavior, you're not quite sure exactly what you're going to get from him.
Right.
And that stuff happens. Now, is some of that you put it out there to sully the waters a little bit? Maybe to get him cheaper or whatever your agenda is.
Gamesmanship, yes.
That stuff happens all the time.
See, I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised one bit. They went the route they did with CJ after stuff started trickling out that I just listened to, but again, you can't talk about until somebody else says it. He has talent, but he's considered like a loose cannon in a lot of ways. Doesn't mean he's a bad player or he just hasn't been reined in yet, in terms of okay, this is what you're expected to be. You can't always be what you want to be.
Yes, exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
and it takes time, and sometimes it's harder to rein in young players, one young player more so than another young player. I think right now he's hurting himself more than he's helped himself, and
Yep.
he's in his prime of his career in terms of what he can accomplish. Did he make that transition? Yes, he struggled a little bit early on, but he settled in by the halfway point of the season and played great football until he got hurt. Him and his representation should have identified that and used that as their MO to market himself during the offseason.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden the word gets out, and as you guys know, because it happens in our business, when the word gets out about you, you cannot defend yourself to everybody.
Right. And,
You know-
and Derek, here's part of the problem. All you did was reinforce that with all the nonsense you pull on social media.
Yep.
With your agency tweeting out, what the Eagles offer was and all that stuff. Like, you're not helping yourself. You're feeding into
No.
what everybody already, the pre-existing thoughts on you. Just lay off, man. Lay off the send button. That's all I
Well,
can say.
A lot of times young people don't realize that a year from now comes a lot quicker than you think. If he had just ridden off into the sunset, gone to Detroit, said all the right things, maybe some general perspectives of him would have changed. But because he started firing shots across the bow, people say, yep, I'm glad we didn't touch him.
Right.
And see, that could hurt him. See, he's on a 1-year prove-it deal. That could hurt him both where he is right now and future opportunities next year when he's up again, still in the prime of his career,
Right.
for possible another big payday, because people are afraid of what he could do in that locker room, being a disruptive factor in that locker room.
No question.
I'm good with him being around Dan Campbell. Dan Campbell's a guy that can make things happen. He's going to make sure he steadies that ship and make sure he gets him under control. And like I said, I like the kid. I like the way he plays. I like how instinctual he is. I like how explosive he is as a player. But if you ask me, did we upgrade at that position? I'm going to say, yes, we did upgrade. We upgraded to a real safety. Are we better than we were last year at the safety position? No, we're not. We're not nowhere near as, as competitive as we could be. So you got a steady Eddie instead of a guy that can go out there and make splash plays every other play. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
But we are better for it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I liken him to like a Kyle Schwarber, right? The upside is he's going to hit bombs.
Exactly.
Whoa, man. Right? And then there's strikeouts, and there's whiffs. And that you have to really go back, and I'm not doing the whole, hey, you got to watch film. I'm just saying, if you go back and look at the film, you see he's in the wrong spot at times. He doesn't know where he's supposed to be. And part of that, I'm not knocking him necessarily. He's still learning.
Exactly.
But the fact remains he's still a converted corner playing the safety spot in the NFL, which he's trying to figure out. And
you can't do you just can't put Terrell Edmonds on a big time slot receiver and not think that he'll beat. He's a safety. He's not a cornerback. But you could put CJGJ there because he's a cornerback. But then you put him back there in space, and he's got to make sure he covers the hook. A lot of times he'll be out of sequence and won't be covering the hook. He might be in deep thirds instead of covering the hook that's underneath. Those are things that come with having a player that's just learned a position.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's look. Let's get back to some of the things we were hitting there with the Eagles. We'll keep rolling with the Eagles a little bit, and we'll push the Phillies down to 130 because I think there's some interesting stuff we didn't quite dive into yet, which we'll do when we come back. But good stuff there, guys. All right, that's Derek, that's Barrett, I'm Rob. We are Sports Take, JAKIB Sports YouTube Network on this Friday. Yes. All right, let's talk a little bit about Jim Murray and Principal Financial Group, because knowing who to trust with your finances can be a very scary proposition. I was at the front of the line, right? But I can tell you from personal experience that Jim is someone that you can trust, and he will be worth the investment in him, okay? Whether it's retirement planning, 401k review, insurance review. You might have a small business and you need help with your employee benefits. That's another resource that Jim can assist you with. I know personally I've entrusted my IRA, my 401k rollovers to Jim, and I couldn't be any happier. You will be too. Give him a call, 610-996-4751, 610-996-4751. You can also email him as well, Murray, Murray.Jim@principal.com. That's Murray.Jim@principal.com.